The girl walked into the restaurant with $5 in her purse and hoped she could barely afford, unaware that the man who promised to meet her had already decided she was not worth the effort. In less than an hour, that truth would carve a quiet wound into her chest, but for now, she still believed the night might change everything. Emily Carter hesitated just inside the doorway, amber light washing over her like something she had not earned. The restaurant was modest, but to her it felt impossibly refined, filled with low music, clinking glass, and conversations she did not belong to. She smoothed her pearl-colored dress, old and thinning at the seams, a piece that once belonged to her mother, and now carried every fragile memory she owned. She had curled her hair slowly that afternoon in her small Portland apartment, counting minutes the way she counted money. A touch of makeup, nothing more. She wanted to look like someone worth meeting, even if deep down she feared she was only pretending. Tonight was proof that she was still brave enough to try. The hostess led her to a window table, and Emily sat carefully folding herself inward with practiced control. Her purse rested in her lap, both hands gripping it as if letting go might expose her. Inside were a bus pass, a student identification card, and a single $5 bill folded until it felt heavier than paper. She checked the time. 6:45 in the evening. Early. Being early made her feel safe, like preparation could protect her from disappointment. She scanned the room, pretending to admire the decor, but her eyes returned to the entrance again and again. She had met Ryan online. His messages had been polite, measured, never demanding. When he suggested this place, she hesitated before saying yes. It had taken her months to trust anyone enough to meet years to believe that showing up might not end in regret. At a nearby table, Daniel Brooks watched without staring. He wore authority the way other men wore confidence, quietly, without display. He noticed Emily because she moved like someone used to being overlooked, someone who learned to shrink without disappearing. Minutes passed. 15, then 30. Emily reread the last message on her phone, forcing a smile as if belief itself could summon him. At 7:30, she called. The ring ended quickly. Voicemail. A server asked if she wanted to order. Emily shook her head and said she was waiting just a little longer. She opened her purse and saw the folded bill. $5. Not enough for a meal, barely enough for dignity. When her phone buzzed again, hope rose before caution could stop it. The message was cruel and careless, mocking her for believing he would come. Emily lifted her chin, and turned toward the door, unaware that someone nearby had already decided she would not leave unseen. Fate had already shifted behind her back. Daniel did not move when Emily stood. He watched her take 2 careful steps toward the door, then pause as if her body had gone ahead while her heart stayed behind. The room continued without her. Laughter lifted near the bar. A couple leaned close over shared plates. To everyone else, she was simply another reservation ending early. To Daniel, she was the quiet after a sentence cut short a person about to vanish because the world had taught her that leaving unseen was safer than staying exposed. He rose and crossed the space between tables with an ease that came from long habit. Power had taught him when to be fast and when to be invisible. He signaled the server and spoke in a low voice that carried certainty without urgency. No explanation, no display. The server nodded and moved away. Daniel stepped back, giving Emily room. Kindness offered too soon could feel like judgment. He waited for the moment to meet her where she was. Emily reached the door when the server returned to the table she had left, setting down a warm plate of pasta and a glass of sparkling lemonade. "Excuse me, miss," the server said gently. "Your order?" Emily turned confused. "I didn't order," she said. The server smiled. It's been taken care of. Your table is covered." A flush of heat crept up Emily's neck. Embarrassment arrived first, then fear. Another joke. Another way hope learned to bruise. She looked around, searching for the punchline. Her gaze found Daniel a few steps away. He did not smile. He did not rush. He simply spoke, his voice, calm, unadorned. "It isn't charity," he said. "It's a reminder. You deserve to eat, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise." The words struck with quiet force. They did not ask permission. They did not demand gratitude. Emily studied his face, searching for pity, for performance, for anything that would make this safe to dismiss. She found none, only steadiness, the kind that does not explain itself. "I didn't ask for this," she said, more to the room than to him. "I know," Daniel replied. "You shouldn't have to." He gestured to the chair, not insisting, only offering. "Please." Emily returned to the table, movements measured, as if sudden motion might shatter the moment. She sat with her hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the plate. Hunger answered before pride could speak. Daniel took the seat across from her, leaving space. Silence settled, heavy, but kind. "Take care of your stomach before you take care of someone else's expectations," Daniel said. "Hunger makes liars of us all." The truth landed where excuses lived. Emily's breath loosened. "You don't know me?" she said. "That's true," he replied. "But I saw enough." She met his eyes. "What did you see?" He leaned forward slightly. "Someone who showed up. Someone who waited because she believed. That still matters." Her throat tightened. Slowly she lifted her fork and took a bite. Warmth grounded her. Reality returned. Daniel stood a moment later, not lingering. He slid a simple card across the table. "I come here for coffee," he said. "No pressure." He nodded once and left. Emily stayed, the plate empty, the ache inside unexpectedly full. For the first time that night, she did not feel small. She felt seen. A week passed, then another, and Emily told herself the memory would fade the way disappointments usually did. She buried herself in classes, library shifts, and long evenings spent reviewing notes under flickering apartment lights. Yet his words stayed with her, not the grand ones, but the quiet certainty behind them. "You deserve to eat. You deserve to exist without apology." They echoed in her mind during moments when self-doubt crept in, when exhaustion pressed heavy against her chest. On a cool Thursday morning, Emily stepped into a small cafe tucked between the community college library and a used bookstore. It was not a place she visited often. Her budget allowed for plain coffee and free wireless internet, nothing more. She stood in line counting coins from her worn purse when a familiar voice spoke behind her, calm and unmistakable. "Make that 2, it said to the barista. "She looks like someone who might need oat milk today." Emily turned, startled to find Daniel seated near the window, a laptop open in front of him, sleeves rolled up, expression warm but unassuming. "You remembered," she said softly as he handed her the cup. "I remembered your courage," Daniel replied. "Your name was the easy part." The words settled gently between them, not demanding a response. They sat in a quiet that felt earned rather than forced, sunlight spilling across the table in soft gold streaks. Emily noticed how comfortable he seemed in stillness, how he did not rush to fill silence with performance. It made her breathe easier without realizing why. Eventually she asked what he did for work, the question casual but cautious. Daniel smiled and deflected with a story, instead one, about a failed product launch that had accidentally sounded like a joke when it was meant to inspire trust. He told it without bitterness or pride, laughing at his own mistakes, describing how public criticism had humbled his team. Emily laughed too genuinely this time, surprised by how natural it felt. He spoke like someone used to responsibility, but uninterested in impressing anyone with it. As the conversation drifted, Emily forgot to be guarded. She shared small pieces of herself, her studies, her work at the library, the way she had learned to read people quickly because it once kept her safe. Daniel listened without interrupting, without offering solutions she had not asked for. When she stood to leave, expecting an invitation to extend the moment, he simply nodded and let her go. No pressure, no expectation. The respect lingered longer than any promise could have. Days later, Emily found herself invited to a small workshop on early childhood nutrition, a topic aligned with her coursework. The registration fee had been quietly waived, a personal message attached that read, "Only thought this might interest you." Daniel stood near the back during the presentation, observing rather than participating. Emily raised her hand, twice asking questions that cut straight to safety and ethics rather than marketing language. Each time the speaker paused, surprised, acknowledging the depth of her concern. Daniel watched with something close to awe. He had seen confident professionals and ambitious interns, but Emily's questions were different. She was not trying to prove intelligence. She was trying to protect someone she had not even met yet. It struck him then that her power was not loud. It was precise, purposeful, dangerous in the best possible way. After the workshop, Emily slipped out quietly, heading toward the library down the street. She did not expect to see Daniel there, but when she pushed open the glass door, he stood near the children's reading corner, one hand gently holding that of a small girl in a yellow sweater dress. The child peeked out from behind his leg, curious but cautious. Emily, Daniel said softly, as if introducing something fragile. "This is Lily, my daughter." Emily crouched slightly, lowering herself to Lily's level. "Hi," she said, smiling without forcing it. Lily studied her for a long moment, then reached out and touched the edge of Emily's cardigan. "She smells like Mommy, Lily," said matter-of-factly. The air shifted. Daniel's breath caught his grip, tightening just enough to betray the effort it took to stay composed. Emily froze, then smiled gently. "That's a very big compliment," she said. "Your mommy must have smelled like kindness." Lily nodded solemnly and skipped away toward a shelf of picture books. Daniel looked at Emily, something unguarded in his eyes, for the first time. "She passed 2 years ago," he said quietly. Emily nodded, understanding more than words could hold. In that moment, without ceremony or declaration, something changed. Not a promise, not a plan. Just a shared understanding that both of them had survived something heavy, and neither was interested in pretending otherwise. From that afternoon on, their lives began to overlap in small, almost invisible ways. Nothing dramatic, nothing announced. Emily stopped by Daniel's office once a week, sometimes just to drop off annotated notes from research papers he had casually asked her opinion on. Other times, she stayed longer, sitting quietly in the corner with a cup of tea while he reviewed presentation slides. She had an instinct for what mattered, for what parents would actually worry about, and Daniel learned quickly that her questions were sharper than any consultant's report. Still, it was never framed as work. It was simply two people thinking aloud, solving problems side by side. What surprised Daniel most was not Emily's intelligence, but her restraint. She never asked about his wealth, his position, or the quiet authority people deferred to when he entered a room. She treated him the same, whether he was in a conference room or picking up Lily from daycare in a wrinkled jacket. That consistency unsettled him in ways power never had. It made him feel visible not as a CEO, but as a man who was still learning how to breathe around grief. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, When his nanny had scheduling conflicts, Daniel found himself calling Emily without hesitation, not because he was desperate, but because Lily responded to her in a way that softened the edges of their routine. Emily would pick Lily up in the late afternoon, braid her hair before dinner, and always read 2 books before bed. Never 1, never 3. It became an unspoken rule. Lily insisted on it, and Emily respected it, understanding instinctively that children built safety out of repetition. Emily never tried to replace Lily's mother. She never crossed lines that did not belong to her. She showed up consistently, quietly, and left space for memories that still lived in the house. Daniel noticed how Lily slept more easily on the nights Emily stayed late, how the tension in his own shoulders eased without him realizing it. Still, neither of them named what was forming. Naming it felt dangerous. Fragile things broke when handled too soon. The evening everything shifted began like any other. Lily came home flushed and warm, her energy lower than usual. By late afternoon, her forehead burned with a low fever. Daniel canceled meetings, balancing video calls with thermometers and half-eaten bowls of soup. Exhaustion settled into his bones. He told himself he could handle it. He always did. But when Emily arrived at the door half an hour later, holding a small canvas bag, he realized he had sounded more tired on the phone than he meant to. "You didn't sound okay," she said, simply stepping inside. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and medicine. Lily lay on the couch beneath a thin blanket, eyes glassy. When she saw Emily, she reached out without speaking. Emily sat beside her, pressed a cool hand to her forehead, and reached into her bag. She pulled out a soft towel, damp and chilled, wrapped carefully to hold its temperature. "Lavender helps," she murmured. "For the head and the heart." Daniel watched from across the room as Emily tended to Lily with practiced calm. Lily's breathing slowed. Her small fingers relaxed. Emily began to hum, barely audible, a melody that slipped into the room like memory. Then, almost without realizing it, she started to sing. The song was soft, uneven in places, woven with nonsense lyrics and gentle rhythm. Daniel froze. He knew that song. His knees weakened as he lowered himself into the armchair behind her. He had not heard that melody in nearly 3 years. It was the lullaby his wife used to sing when Lily was too small to sleep alone, the one she had made up on the spot, the one that always ended with a line about the moon wearing socks when it was cold at night. Emily sang it perfectly, every word, every pause. The tears came before he could stop them. Silent at first, then uncontrollable. Years of discipline, of composure, of leadership dissolved in seconds. Emily felt the shift behind her, but did not turn. She kept singing, her voice trembling only once, then steady again. When the song ended, Lily slept peacefully, her fever eased just enough. Emily looked over her shoulder. Daniel sat with his face in his hands, breath uneven. "I didn't know," she whispered. He shook his head. "You couldn't have." His voice was hoarse. "I thought Lily had forgotten." Emily glanced down at the sleeping child. "Children don't forget love," she said softly. "They just wait to hear it again." They sat there for a long time after that. No confessions, no labels. Just the quiet understanding that something had already changed, whether either of them was ready to admit it or not. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, folded neatly inside a plain white envelope that looked too ordinary to carry the weight it did. Emily stared at it for several minutes before opening it, her fingers hovering as if touching the paper might change what it contained. She read the first line once, then again, then a third time, her breath catching halfway through. Full tuition, 1 year. Pediatric specialization, out of state. Everything she had worked toward quietly, painfully, without ever daring to believe it might actually happen. The joy came second. The fear came first. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, the letter resting in her lap, like something fragile and alive. Oregon, a year away, a future she had earned. And yet her thoughts went immediately unwillingly to Daniel's kitchen, to Lily's bedtime routine, to the steady rhythm that had formed without permission. She had learned to survive by leaving before she could be left. Now the leaving felt heavier, not because she owed anyone anything, but because for the first time, someone had made space for her without demanding she fill it. She waited 3 days before telling him. Not out of manipulation, but out of fear that speaking it aloud would turn it real. On the 4th afternoon, they sat on a park bench while Lily chased soap bubbles across the grass, her laughter rising and falling with the wind. The sun filtered through the trees, scattering light over their feet. Emily folded the letter carefully in her coat pocket, then unfolded it again. Her hands trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "I got the scholarship," she said quietly. Daniel turned to her, surprise flickering across his face, before breaking into something warm and unguarded. "Emily," he said, smiling, "that's incredible." She nodded, eyes fixed on the ground. "It's in Oregon. It starts in August, 1 year." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Daniel's smile softened, but it did not fade. He was quiet for a moment, watching Lily leap after a bubble that floated just out of reach. "You should go," he said. Emily looked up sharply. "You think so?" Her voice wavered despite herself. "What if you think I'm just leaving when things get good? Like I used this as a place to land, and now I'm walking away." The words spilled out faster than she intended, fear surfacing after years of careful restraint. Daniel shook his head slowly. "Loving someone doesn't mean holding them in place," he said. "It means not clipping their wings." The simplicity of it stunned her. No guilt, no hesitation, just faith. Emily felt something inside her loosen, something she had kept tight for so long, she forgot it could release. She left in early August. The night before her flight, Daniel invited her and Lily to dinner at his place. They ate pasta by candlelight because Lily insisted it made everything special. Afterward, Lily brought out a paper chain. She had made one link for each week Emily would be gone. When it was time to leave, Emily knelt to say goodbye, her chest aching with words she could not quite shape. Lily threw her arms around her neck before she could speak. "You're not going far," Lily whispered. "Daddy says hearts don't care about distance." Emily closed her eyes, holding the child close, breathing in the moment like something she might need later. When she stood, Daniel was waiting by the door, hands in his pockets, expression open but careful. No promises. No wait for me. Just understanding. She walked away that night with tears on her cheeks, not because she was losing something, but because for the first time in her life, she was being let go without being abandoned. Oregon was harder than she expected. Long nights, grueling rotations, moments when exhaustion threatened to erase purpose. But Emily endured. She learned. She grew. And through it all, she carried the knowledge that somewhere, someone believed in her enough to step aside and let her become who she was meant to be. The year passed the way transformation often does, quietly and all at once. Emily returned stronger than she left, not because Oregon had hardened her, but because it had clarified her. She walked back into the community hospital where she once volunteered, this time wearing a pressed white coat and an identification badge that read, "Registered Nurse," beneath her name. The letters felt unreal against her chest. She had survived the nights she thought would break her, the rotations that tested her resolve, the loneliness that forced her to learn who she was when no one was watching. The morning moved in a blur of introductions and paperwork. Faces from her intern days greeted her with surprise, then respect. Just before lunch, a nurse she barely knew handed her a sleek envelope with a knowing smile. "There's an event this afternoon," she said. "You're invited." Inside was a simple card. Product launch, rooftop garden, Brooks Nutrition, 3 in the afternoon. Emily did not need to read the name twice. The elevator doors opened onto a rooftop washed in late summer light. Herb planters lined the space, soft music floated above quiet conversation, and white chairs faced a modest podium. A long table displayed pastel-colored packaging arranged with care. Emily stopped short when she saw the words printed across the boxes. "First spoon, for the women who stayed hungry to feed hope." Her throat tightened. The silhouette on the side of the packaging showed a woman cradling a child, a spoon in her free hand. The image was subtle, but unmistakable. Daniel stood near the podium, speaking to a small group of investors and staff. He looked older than when she had last seen him, lines etched deeper at the corners of his eyes. But there was a steadiness to him now that felt earned rather than imposed. When his gaze found hers across the rooftop, he paused for half a second. Just long enough. Then he finished his sentence, excused himself, and walked toward her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd still want me to," Emily replied, her voice softer than she intended. Daniel smiled, a quiet curve of familiarity. "Impossible," he said. They stood there, the noise of the event fading into the background. Two people measuring the distance between who they were and who they had become. Lily appeared at Daniel's side, moments later, taller now, her hair pulled back in uneven braids. She looked up at Emily with instant recognition and wrapped her arms around her without hesitation. Emily knelt, laughing through the sudden sting behind her eyes. Later, when the crowd thinned and the sun dipped lower, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. He did not kneel. He did not perform. He simply opened a small box in his palm, revealing a simple ring, unassuming and deliberate. "I don't want to save you," he said quietly. "I don't want to complete you. I want to walk beside you if you'll let me." Emily did not cry. She did not hesitate. She nodded because the choice felt clear, grounded free. This was not love born of need or rescue. It was love chosen in peace by two people who had learned how to stand on their own and still reach for each other. Above them, the city hummed. Around them, life continued. And between them, something settled into place, steady and real, ready for what came next. The restaurant looked exactly the same, which unsettled Emily more than she expected. The same warm lighting, the same polished wood, the same low hum of conversation that made private moments feel invisible. Yet everything inside her had changed. She walked in beside Daniel, their fingers interlaced naturally without hesitation or performance. Lily skipped ahead of them, her small shoes tapping eagerly against the floor, as if she already knew where she was going. The hostess greeted them with a practiced smile and led them to a corner table near the window. Emily recognized it instantly. It was the table. The one where she had once sat alone, counting minutes, folding and unfolding her courage until it nearly tore. Except now, there were 3 chairs. Daniel pulled one out for her without ceremony, then lifted Lily into hers, adjusting the napkin on her lap with gentle precision. No one stared. No one whispered. And yet, Emily felt the weight of memory settle around her like a held breath finally released. Daniel handed her the menu, his expression lighter than she had ever seen it. "Order whatever you want," he said quietly. Tonight we eat for the girl who waited and still believed someone would show up. Emily laughed, the sound surprising even herself. It was soft, but it was real. She looked down at the menu, then back at him. You remember everything she said. Daniel shook his head. I remember you. Lily rummaged through her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, smoothing it carefully on the table. It was a crayon drawing, bright and imperfect. A small house with a yellow door. 3 stick figures sitting at a table, one tall, one with long hair, one very small, wearing purple shoes. This is us, Lily announced proudly. And that's spaghetti because Emily likes spaghetti. Emily's breath caught as she reached out, her fingers hovering before touching the page. She realized then that what had formed between them was not built on rescue or obligation. It had grown from presence, from showing up without demanding anything in return. The server arrived with bread and water, the same one who had once asked if she wanted to order while she waited for someone who never came. This time, there was no waiting, only choosing. Emily looked at Daniel across the table, the man who had once been just a quiet stranger who saw her when no one else did. She thought of the girl she used to be clutching $5 and pretending she was not hungry. She leaned forward slightly and spoke with calm certainty. You were never late, she said. I just needed to believe long enough to wait. Daniel reached for her hand and lacing his fingers through hers, grounding and sure. Outside, night settled over the city. Inside, at one small table, a future took shape. Not dramatic, not loud, just real. The same restaurant breathed around them, unchanged and quietly unaware of the circle it was closing. The lighting still glowed soft and amber. The polished wood still reflected candlelight in gentle ripples. The low hum of conversation wrapped the room like background music to a life unfolding. But this time, Emily did not step inside, carrying fear in her chest or $5 folded into her purse like a secret. This time she walked in, holding Daniel's hand, her fingers woven into his, with a calm certainty that felt earned rather than borrowed. Lily skipped ahead of them, her small shoes tapping eagerly against the floor. She did not hesitate, did not search for reassurance. She knew where she belonged. The hostess smiled warmly and led them to a corner table by the window. Emily recognized it instantly. The same table, the same view of the street outside, the same place where she had once sat alone, counting minutes, folding hope thinner with every passing second. Only now there were 3 chairs waiting. Daniel pulled one out for Emily without a word, then lifted Lily into hers, adjusting the napkin on her lap with quiet care. There was no ceremony in the gesture, no performance. Just familiarity. The kind that grows slowly and stays. Emily sat down and let herself look around. The same server passed by, older now, but still wearing the same gentle expression. For a moment, memory tightened in her chest, then released. Daniel handed her the menu, smiling. Order whatever you want, he said. Tonight we eat for the girl who waited and still believed someone would show up. Emily laughed softly, emotion catching in the sound. She nodded, unable to speak right away. He had remembered everything. Not the embarrassment, not the cruelty, but the courage it took to stay seated as long as she had. Lily reached into her small backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, smoothing it carefully on the table. It was a crayon drawing, bright and imperfect. A little house with a yellow door. 3 stick figures sitting at a table. One tall, one with long hair, one small, wearing purple shoes. This is us, Lily announced proudly. And that's spaghetti because Emily likes spaghetti. Emily's breath caught. She touched the paper gently as if it might dissolve under her fingers. In that moment, she understood something she had never been able to name before. Family was not something you were rescued into. It was something you chose and were chosen for, again and again. The server arrived with warm bread and water, setting them down without interrupting the intimacy of the moment. Emily looked across the table at Daniel, the man who had once been just a stranger at the next table. The man the world knew as powerful, decisive, untouchable. Yet here he was, grounded steady, choosing presence over protection. Choosing her, not because he needed to be saved, but because he wanted to stay. She thought of the girl she used to be. The girl who had counted coins before dates. The girl who believed hope was dangerous because it hurt when it broke. The girl who waited 45 minutes and still told herself that believing was better than giving up. Emily leaned forward slightly, her voice calm and sure. "You were never late," she said quietly. "I just needed to believe long enough to wait." Daniel did not answer right away. He reached across the table and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. His grip was warm, solid, real. He nodded once. Outside night settled over the city headlights, tracing lines through the dark. Inside time seemed to slow, as if honoring what had taken so long to form. Lily swung her legs beneath the table, humming to herself. 3 people. 1 table. No grand rescue. No fairy tale ending written in excess. Just a future built from small, deliberate moments of showing up. From choosing kindness when it would have been easier to look away. From believing that dignity was not something earned, but something every person deserved. Emily smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because it was honest. Because for the first time in her life, love did not feel like survival. It felt like home. Stories like this remind us of something psychology and human behavior research has proven again and again. People do not heal because they are rescued. They heal because they are seen. Emily did not fall in love because someone paid for her dinner. She found her strength because someone recognized her dignity when she'd almost forgotten it herself. And Daniel did not become powerful because of his position, but because he knew when to sit quietly and let compassion lead. If this story moved, you take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Supporting stories like this helps bring more reminders that kindness, patience, and showing up still matter in a world that often rushes past pain. And now, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share just one short phrase that captures this story for you. Something simple, something honest, 3 words or less.